Alright then, so we've already seen how we can handle click events, like when a user clicks on a button, by hooking that click event up to a method which we then define inside our view component. Now we can do a similar kind of thing with different types of mouse events, things like double click or mouse over or mouse leave, etc. So let's take a look at a few of those. So first what I'm going to do is come back to the template, and I've already created at the bottom of the div with an ID of app a BR tag and a comment, and down here I'm going to create 4 different divs, each one with a class of box, because we're going to use that class to style each one a little bit as well. And we're doing 4 because we're going to look at 4 different mouse events. Now I've already created styles for this. In the head over here, I've created a style tag, and you can see now that each box has a padding 100 pixels top and bottom, 0 left and right, a width of 400 pixels. We align the text to the center, a background of a light grey color, a bit of margin for each box, and also we display each one as inline block. So if I save this now, we should see those 4 boxes over here. Okay, so I want to now attach a different mouse event to each one. So let me do some text in the middle of each one before I do that. So the first one is going to be a mouse over, and that means basically enter the mouse onto the element. The second one is going to be a mouse leave event, that means exit the mouse. The third one is going to be a double click. And the fourth one is going to be something slightly different, which we'll come back to later. So let's do this one first of all. I'm going to attach an event to this, and remember we can use either v-on colon and then the event type, which is mouse over, or we can use, instead of this bit, the @ symbol, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to set that equal now to a function which we will define over in the component. So let me do this. I'm going to call the function handle event, and then I'm just going to log to the console event like so. So now I can reference that over here, handle event like so. If I save that and open up the console, if we go to mouse over the first one, we see event. If I do it again, we see event. Now while I move around inside the box, nothing happens. It's only when I first enter the element we get that event. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one I want to show you is the mouse leave. So let's do that. Mouse leave. And set that equal to the function again, handle event. And in fact, we'll do this one as well. And this is double click. So let's say @dbl click. So that stands for double. And then set that equal to the same function, handle event. Let me save this and preview. And if we come over here, we can now see this one works. When we go into this one, nothing happens. But when we exit, that event fires. And you saw the number 2 here. And then down here, nothing happens when we enter and exit, but if we double click, then we see another event. And we've not done the fourth one. We'll come back to that in a second, but before we do that, I want to talk about the event object as well. So whenever we have events like this that happen in the browser, whether that's double click, mouse leave, mouse over, just a normal click, or any other kind of event, we automatically get access to an optional event object. And that can be taken in as a parameter right here. And it must be the first parameter. So I could type E right here, and you can call it what you want, by the way. You don't have to call it E right here. You can call it EV or event, doesn't matter. But now we can log that to the console. This is automatically passed in as a first argument when we fire an event, when an event occurs. So let me save it and try this again. Now if I mouse over, you see this object right here. It's a mouse event, and if we expand, there's loads of different information about the event. This right here says whether the Alt key was pressed while the event occurred. In our case, it was false. We also have the client X and the client Y. We also have down here whether the control key was pressed, the layer X, the layer Y, offset. There's loads of different things. Also, we have the type down here. That's the type of event that occurred. So let's also log that out. I'm going to say E and E.type, like so. And if I save this, let's try the different events. So this one was mouse over. This is mouse leave. And this is double click. All right. So when an event occurs, you might find it useful to get some of this information. For example, you might want to react to a user when they click something, but only if they're holding Alt as well. Or you might want to update a UI element based on the offset properties, okay? And we will probably use some of these later. And in fact, in a minute, we're going to see an example of that. But before we do that, what if we also want to pass in a custom parameter as well, like we did before? So say, for example, over here, I also want to pass in my own argument. So I can say, for example, I want to pass in a number, which is 5. Now, what's going to happen, because when we did this before, this argument should be therefore the first argument inside here. Now, if I save this, let's see what happens. If I go to the top and mouse enter, we see 5, and E suddenly becomes undefined. So when we pass in our own argument like this right here is the first argument, and we don't get that event object. However, when we're passing our own custom arguments in, we can explicitly say that we want the event object to be passed in as well. And to do that, we say $event, and now this will be the first argument and this will be the second. When we don't pass any arguments in, the event object is automatically the first argument that we receive. But when we do pass our own arguments in, we have to explicitly say that we want the event object in as a parameter as well, and then any of our own parameters or arguments after that. So now, if I save it, we can say E, that will be the event object that we get right here, and we can take in a second optional argument if we want to. For example, we'll call this data, but you can call it what you want. And down here we'll say if data, if that has a value, then we'll log it to the console. Okay, now I do this if check because we don't always have the data. In these other events, we're not passing through any data as a second argument. We're just getting access to the event automatically as a first argument. But in the first one, that's where we pass in the additional argument, the data, okay? So I hope that all makes sense. Now let's try this. And if we mouse over, we can see we get the event object, then the type, and then the data right here, our own custom argument. And these are still going to work the same way. We automatically get that event object as a first argument. Okay, so now we've learned a little bit about that. Let's have a look at this fourth one I wanted to do. Now this one is going to be a mouse move event, and I'm going to set that equal to a different function. This one is going to be called handle mouse move, like so. And I don't need to pass anything into that because we're going to get the event object automatically. Now inside that function, let's define it first. So handle mouse move, like so, and we take in the event object automatically. Inside here, what I want to do is update two properties, and I'm going to create those two properties first. First one is X, and that's the X position within the square that we have the event on, so within this square right here. And then secondly, the Y property. So they're both going to be 0 to begin with. But then what we're going to do is update those when this function is fired, and we can use the properties from the event object to update them. So I'm going to say this.x is equal to e.offset x. So that will be the cursor position within this box. The offset is the offset relative to the top left of the box. So we're going to get that position for x, and we'll do a similar thing for y. So this.y is equal to offset, or rather e.offset y. So now we have those two properties, but we're not doing anything with them. So what I'll do is output them right here. I'm going to say position, and then I'm going to output first of all x, and then secondly y. So to begin with, they're going to be 0, but whenever the mouse moves around the box, and by the way, this is mouse move, not mouse over. So whenever we move at all within the box, it's going to fire the event. And at that point, we're taking the event object to this function, and we update the values of x and y, and they will be reflected right here in the template. So we should see them on the screen. So let's give this a whirl. Let's go to the bottom, and you can see at the minute position starts at 0, 0. But the minute I go in, you can see those numbers update. If I go to the top left, it should be very close to 0, 0, like that. If we go to the bottom right, then that's going to be something like 400 and 200 and something. There we go. Okay, so there we go, my friends. That's how we work with other mouse events that we will be using a lot in the future of this course, and also the event object.